You guys see me? It had said I was live, but it didn't actually seem to be showing up on my channel. It says upcoming. Hello? Hello? All right. Can you see me? Because on my channel, it is still saying notify me that it's going to start at 6:04 or something like that, which I don't know how to affect that. So let me know if you guys can see or hear me. Because on my neither. All right. There we go. Now, can you see me? Anyone? Bueller? All right. So we had a little technical difficulties for some reason. It was showing up on my channel as waiting, even though I was in there. You could see it on Zoom, but ain't nothing gonna break my stride. Ain't nothing gonna slow me down. Oh no, we're gonna keep on moving. So real quick, as people roll in, as you guys know, you have about a week left in this month to jump on my Patreon, where any paid people, you get more entries depending on how many what your tier is, will be entered into a prize at least every month. This month we got this great Fox Edge FE 520 knife with a great ergonomic handle, nice big belly on that blade, and the little attitude adjuster on there. And then so that will be anyone who signs up before the end of the month. You get entries and it'll be randomly drawn out of that. And then next month I'll have multiple items. One of which is this really cool. I don't know if you saw on Rogue Preparedness's channel. She had this really tiny little. She was like, "This is adorable," and I was like, "Damn right, that is adorable. I want one." So I messaged these people and one, two to try out. So I got two of these. I'm testing this one, and I'm going to keep it as long as it's legit. And then I'm going to give away the other one. And this is the Lose. There's a brand name on this. What it's called. Leehoo's. And I'll put the link after this on Amazon. And it's a radio and light, emergency radio and light, and battery bank. So I have been trying, I got this thing and I turned the light on immediately. As you can see, it's still on. It's kind of weak, but I wanted to drain the battery and then see how much radio time or light time I could get with like 10 minutes of crank charging. And this damn thing won't run out. It's been 3 days and it's barely a nightlight level right now, but it's enough to read off of. And I think you can still get the 92 to 97. North winds 5 to 10 miles. As you can see, it's giving me the battery flashing, but it's still working. It's got some preset weather band. It's got AM, FM, a 3,000 milliamp battery, which is actually pretty big. The battery bank would be about the size of one of those is like the size of a deck of cards roughly. And I still haven't updated this from like the 70s. So I'll be using this for a while. I just was talking to Praxis Prepper about the reviews and how, try to make sure I actually use this stuff. And I will post the link in a minute or after the video because I don't think I have it up here anymore. Actually, here it is on Amazon. But like I said, I have not finished my review yet. So if you guys want to wait, I understand. But so far, I really like it. It's cool looking. It seems rugged. And it's supposed to be waterproof. And one thing that makes me at least a little more confident in that is that this cover actually screws on to cover the plugs. It doesn't just plug in there. And the one thing I will say about is I've talked before about how these are stupid and they're a gimmick and they're useless, and I'd rather they just not include it. Because in anything other than the absolute most emergency scenario where you need to leave this out in the sun for a whole day to get 5 minutes of radio time, maybe, while you're simultaneously destroying your battery in there because of the heat, that these are just pointless. They're a gimmick to have the built-in tenth of a watt solar panel. I don't even know what those are, but it has the crank. So that's what my test is going to be. As soon as I can get this to run out of light, which hopefully is in the next, well, not hopefully, maybe it'll last forever, but it was in the next day or two. It's already been 3 full days. I just left the light sitting on. Um, and it's barely on, but it's enough that you could like read, or basically a night light. So it's almost out, almost out. And I want to see how much like radio time we can get. So that'll be a giveaway with a few other things I'll be adding in for October. But let's see if we got any comments. We'll get into today's topics. I'm 35% market, 25% home, 40% fixed cash. Interesting. I've talked before about how more regular people, more normies are in the market than ever before, which to me is a bad sign because it's like pump and dump. That does not mean that people will lose nominal value in the markets. In fact, I specifically titled this, "The Market Melt is Coming." But, and it's imminent. I do think it's imminent, but we may already be in it, but we don't yet know whether we're going to see the melt up or melt down first. We're going to see some action. We know that long term, the melt up is guaranteed, or rather the currency devaluation, which makes pricing things in the market tend to go up in nominal terms, but it might just cause a bunch of weird alternate price discovery mechanism. And that's the main thing here, is that the financial system has become such an abstraction now that it no longer is a price discovery method for stocks or anything else. And that's why you can get some of these random companies out there that are producing real things that you need to sustain life, like oil, trading at 2 or 3 times earnings with double-digit dividends. Meanwhile, companies that are doing nothing, literally producing nothing, are dozens, if not, orders of magnitude times more price to earning ratios. The only way you will ever make money, and not even paying dividends or paying a useless, dividend, the only way you would ever make money off of it is if someone, the same way you'd make money off a Pokemon card. So if someone buys it from you later for more. The advantage that the Pokemon card has, it has actual scarcity, and it's a real item that you can hold in your hand, which a lot of these companies and things like that are fugazis. So that's what we need to look out for. A lot of people are calling for Shocktober type events. Gregory Mannarino specifically has said that based on what he's seeing, he expects the exact opposite, at least leading up to what he calls a presidential selection, and that he does not expect to see a crash in October. In fact, he expects to see almost the opposite. And speaking of power, cactus ran out. We got the nuke going strong. He's plugged into the wall, but the little cactus needs some batteries. That reminds me, this is an offset. ADHD night. When I was getting one of these from the casino, because I won this, or not won it, they give you free shit at the casino. And I was like, they had a choice between this or like a pineapple or a palm tree little neon light. They're just LEDs. And the woman was like, "Which one do you want?" And I was like, "I'll take the cactus." And she was like, "Cacti." I'm like, "No, bitch, it's a cactus. Cacti is plural. Unless you want to give me more than one." I didn't actually. I just shook my head and said, "No, it's cactus." So, how looking for North Africa? What time is it over there for you? I know it's got to be weird, but I appreciate you always tuning in. So, what are we going to do about stocks? I think the stocks are especially volatile place to be over the next few years, but I do think there's going to be a lot of money to be made because I think we could simultaneously see crashes and melt ups. Well, not literally simultaneously, but maybe if you divide by sectors. I think that, like I said, the financial system as a whole has only ever been, and I beat this drum from the first videos I've ever made on the subject, is that economics used to be called the study of the allocation of the Earth's scarce resources. And they've added layer upon layer of abstraction to that, and thinking that they're going to outsmart the universe by complicating things and making rules so that you can privatize the gains and socialize the losses. And they've been pretty damn good at that. It's lasted a long time, at least 100 years, that they've been able to pilfer this way. But sooner or later, anything that can't last forever won't, and reality always comes smashing back to at least an equilibrium, usually swings past it to the other direction. And what does that mean? It means that the real things, the elements of the earth that we actually need to survive, that are real tangible items, every single financial economic instrument that's ever been made or conceived always is eventually just based on representing first order wealth that comes out of the earth. Commodities, energy, human capital. That's it. Anything else is just representing that. I don't care if it's a deed, an insurance policy, a stock, a derivative of a stock, a derivative of that derivative, an unfunded liability, a transfer program, a social program. It is all, when it comes down to it, just representing something that you can touch with your fingers. So if you can't touch your wealth with your fingers, you don't really have it. And that is the risk with stocks, with Bitcoin, with anything else. Obviously, stocks that represent directly at least a company that has real things is going to be worth more than any of these other more abstract financial instruments. But the real stuff is always key. The land, the metals, the oil, food, the livestock, like I said, even human labor, especially specialized human labor, is always going to be worth something. Energy is a big one. The solar and wind people are delusional. It's fantastic technology. They do a horrible, horrible job of looking at the big picture in terms of what all is actually being used resource-wise to create this and what the net positive benefit is. They just will look at a solar farm and saying, this costs $1 billion and is giving us $1.2 billion in electricity. Therefore, it makes sense. But that doesn't always make sense because, first of all, they're not usually doing the calculations right. They're not factoring in the actual life cycle, all the fossil fuels they had to use to mine and manufacture and transport those solar panels, how all the energy and human labor that has to be spent on maintaining it, cleaning off the solar panels, at the actual life cycle of like, are these things really going to be producing even 80% of what they're supposed to in 10 years, in 20 years, before you have to do it all over again when the resources used to build it and the energy are going to be vastly more expensive. So energy is a big deal. What's up from Gulf Coast of Florida? Well, Gulf Coast was my old stomping grounds. I was on the other side, East Coast of Florida, but Florida in general, never too far from the coast. What do you say? I hope it's awful. Hope what's awful. Good evening from Colorado. Best way for me to invest in the market is dollar cost averaging. Overall, sure, but that's big assumptions too. There is no, like, people tend to look at it as it's impossible to lose money if you dollar cost average over the long term, and that's not true. It has been true, but this isn't something like a coin flip where there's a physically, like, universal, by the universe constrained number of outcomes. The country could dissolve into a civil war. We could get invaded by aliens. We could have an incredible technological breakthrough that changes things even better in the other direction. But there is no like law of the universe that says that the stock market has to continue to gain value forever. In fact, that's impossible. And that's one of the things that all of the systems are based on is continued exponential growth for it to work. And we know that that cannot happen in a system that you're talking about real resources and finite limitations. And so we know it's going to break at some point. Is it going to break now? Is it going to break in 50 years? I don't know, but we know it's going to break. And I've talked about this before, but that's my big problem with why I think Elon Musk is wrong about the population problem too, is because you can say that we're going to have problems if you have a lopsided population in terms of age, but everything in the universe has to exist in equilibrium. So the key to not having a hugely lopsided population is not to just continually exponentially grow the base of the pyramid, it's to make a sustainable system that can exist as an equilibrium like every other ecosystem in the universe. Like a natural lake, you don't just continue, if you have too many fish in the lake, you don't just continue pouring food in and increasing the number of fish and say, oh, there's too many fish in this lake. What are we going to do? Well, we just have to keep adding more food. No, you have to realize that you have created an unsustainable system and look at what it would take to be sustainable. And I don't buy that some of these problems are catastrophic. If you have a healthy, otherwise healthy country and economy, and you have an age population that is much larger than the younger population, that's not inherently a catastrophic thing. It's going to cause problems, but the problems that they come up are always things like, oh, well, then our social programs aren't going to be able to afford it. Well, these social programs are never going to work to begin with. And now we're just seeing why. So it needs government supplements to make it cost. It needs all sorts of, you know, uh, gracious kind of behaviors to make it affordable. You have to look at the, like I said, focus on specific elements of the math and not the big picture and all this other sort of stuff. It's in a lot of times solar and wind is like the troll math of having a wind generator on top of your car and being like, oh, this fan costs $50 and now it's generating $51 in electricity. But like, yeah, but you're going to drive the car to get the wind, and that's a crude example of how the solar and wind is working, but it's the same kind of thing that's happening. They're not factoring in the trucks that had to take these huge windmills and all the mining that was done and the manufacturing and the raw metals and all the water and everything just to have one single wind turbine up there for a few years before it breaks and they have to do it all over again. I've not even seen anyone attempt to run the math on that because it's probably so disastrously bad in the other direction that's probably not even close to being a good deal. They're great. That type of technology is great for individual or business level independent, like energy independence in certain situations, because if you're trying to make a homestead off grid, it's not really your concern whether over the lifetime of whatever, if that wind generator is getting you a better deal on electricity than being hooked up to the grid, because your goal is to have power off the grid. So even if it's costing you more, you're still getting what you needed out of that situation. Same with the solar, et cetera. But for it to be a better system at like a population level, it has to just be a better system, and it's not. And that's why I think uranium's still a great place to be, because over the next 10, 20, 30 years, especially, this is going to become very, very obvious and admitted. And people are going to have to go back to nuclear, especially we're going to see energy prices go crazy when the continued World War III expansion happens. And it is going to happen because you can't ignore reality when you just need the resources to send tanks and missiles and all this other stuff and nuclear powered aircraft carriers. They can't deny reality and win. You might be able to deny reality, but you're going to lose then. So the people who don't deny reality are going to be the ones who come out ahead, and thus use oil. So I expect to see oil, uranium, all commodities, agriculture, food, big time. All that stuff is going to be a good place to be. It's just, well, it's the mistake is looking at that stuff and thinking that that is a sector. Really, it is economics. Everything else is an abstraction based on it that has only been allowed to operate independently because we've been in such a prosperous state, separated from real world. Market will not always go up, in the long term, it always goes up. Does it? There's markets that don't even exist anymore. So that's not true. It has always gone up over the long term, but the market, let alone the country, won't even just always exist. And you can look at other countries, the market always goes up until the system collapses and they make a new system, and then we're back to the market always goes up, minus the people who absolutely lost every penny that they had. It's an abstraction. Yeah, I bought solar because it's worth the screw tax credit, screw grid type. Right. And like I said, at the individual level, it gives you fantastic capability. Simply like just because you're not dependent on the grid. 2:13 and go to sleep at 4 a.m. usually. Good to know, Ahmed. I'm about the same way here at the going to bed at 3 in the morning. But I appreciate you staying up and checking out the streams. All in on remote farmland, ammo, and precious metals. Yep. I am of the mindset. I don't really like you can't put, like, the people say you can't put all your eggs in one basket. That's a case or our selection way of doing things where you're guaranteed to have some losses. I like the putting all your eggs in one basket and watching that basket very, very closely, guarding it with your life. And I'm not being literal, like I don't have all my money in the exact same thing, but just real physical first order wealth. And like I said, I think stocks, I think we're very likely / guaranteed to see a melt up at some point. We might have a brief meltdown in stocks at some point first. And in fact, I've always suspected that will be the case. But as long as the companies that you have invested in the stock market are real companies that do real things, it's probably better to just have them and not try to time that crash. Maybe have some money sitting on the sidelines. I think cash is kind of necessary to have right now, at least to some extent. You don't want to have a lot in it because you're losing so much to inflation, but there will be opportunities where stuff goes down and everything will be dragged down initially, possibly even gold, silver, and cryptos. And certainly a lot of these companies that are still solid, everything will go down initially as people panic and flee to like the safety of cash before they realize which ones actually have value. So that's a chance to jump in on maybe some mining shares, maybe some food companies, stuff like that. If the market disappears, so will the dollar in the country. Not necessarily. I mean, lots of markets and currencies have dissolved without there being complete annihilation of the country and the culture. It will be some crazy times, that's for sure. But and more of what I'm talking about is purchasing power too. Just because the market always goes up, that's in nominal terms. And that probably will happen, but that doesn't mean that the amount that you can buy with that you're actually gaining money. You might actually be losing just because of the fact that it's the currency that's dying and not really the value of all the stuff that's going up. So I don't necessarily think it's guaranteed that either the stock market goes up forever in real purchasing power or the country disappears. It'll be, as usual, something in the middle. And like I said, we've seen lots of times where they've had to just revalue, shave 10 or shaved a couple zeros off the currency, and people just lose a shitload of money, and then you just move on, with your life after being financially devastated. And that's the thing, is that these things aren't real, so they can do stuff like that. For them to take this, they would have to physically come and take it. And sometimes that might be a risk, but it's certainly a lot less of a risk than them just going, all right, you have half the money that you did before. What? Bail-ins, where this money is now a asset of the bank, etc. So let's see what else we have. This is totally random. I was going to do a video on this, but I was talking with someone, I think it was a poker or something, and it's always been like one of my autistic focus things is that I hate the argument for saying Kamala's all about self-defense now too, so we can talk about that. That shotguns are better for home defense specifically because it's easier to hit your target with. They're like, oh, it's harder to miss. And I'm like, all right. First of all, that's true only if you're using like birdshot, which I don't think is great for home defense. And if I want something that's going to pack a punch, so obviously it would be like buckshot. And even with a completely open choke at like 5 yards, 7 max, your spread is going to be about the size of your fist. And if you're hitting that when you would be missing with a regular bullet, then you're just nicking them anyway. And you should just become a better shot. That was totally random side. It will get real crazy when it drops. That's what I'm preparing for 15 years. The time added up because things are getting cheap for this back. Yeah, I know. We love to see prices as they were back 15 years ago. Stuff seems like a dream now. Gold, ammo, guns. The only thing that's gotten better from when I was like young is I came of age under the assault weapons ban before Bush finally let it expire. And so like 30 round magazines and like AR-15s and stuff, they're actually cheaper now, especially the magazines, than they were then, which is like the only thing I can think of other than like huge plasma TVs. It's the only good thing for prepping related that's cheaper now. I spent 15 years planting hundreds of fruit trees and thousands of berry bushes. That is awesome. Wouldn't trade it for $10 million cash. I think that's the right decision. Although 10 million depends. You could just redo that in a bigger spot, but I get the point, and you're right. And I tell people that if you have land, the best thing you can do is plant a bunch of trees, fruit or nut trees that are indigenous enough to your area that they don't require a lot of upkeep or extra watering, because even on like a third of an acre or half an acre, and certainly if you're talking about acreage, the amount of food you can get from trees is like insane. Like one orange tree or apple tree can give you like hundreds of pounds of food. And if you can grow like nuts, any sort of fruit trees, all that stuff is fantastic. And if you can have 10, 20 or more trees, that's a shitload of food that you'll be produced every year. And absolutely everyone who has land, like I said, even a normal yard, if you can put some kind of productive tree there. Out here, there's really not much. Some citrus kind of grows, maybe a pomegranate or a fig, but like these big production trees, not really. But if you're somewhere that you can grow nuts and fruits or even more tropical type stuff like mangoes and avocados, that's money. But even somewhere north, you can do apples, plums, you can do pears, you can do a bunch of different nuts. There's all sorts of stuff that are just wildly productive compared to, and the amount of effort that you have to put in versus like a garden is not even close. Trees, they just, if they can grow naturally in your area, you don't have to water them. You have to do minor stuff, maybe to watch out for pests or pruning occasionally, and you'll just get tons and tons and tons of food, and it's the best thing you can do. And same with the berry bushes, especially if they're perennials. Like you could walk around out and back in Florida, go into the woods, and there'd just be blackberry bushes, and we get buckets of them. It's awesome. And yeah, berries, anything perennial like that that just grows naturally in your area is such a fantastic idea if you have the space. Yes, John McKinnon says, good comments on population decline. There'll be pain as the pop reduces, but finding equilibrium at lower pop is doable. Right. And we're at the point now where you're having pain either way. So I don't know why um, if you're not in an equilibrium ecosystem, where your population just goes up sometimes down sometimes, but it's generally stable, then you have a unsustainable system. It's either collapsing until it'll go extinct, or it's exponentially increasing until it has the same problem eventually anyway. Eventually you can't make the bottom of the pyramid bigger by 5% or whatever it needs to be to support the aging population every single generation, and you just have overflowing. So I'd rather deal with these problems now instead of when we're in some Judge Dredd scenario where 800 million people are living in like the mega city one and the resources are all that, you know what I mean? Like, let's just deal with the problem now and create a sustainable system. And it only becomes a major issue if you try to do price control type stuff or have a bunch of immigrants come in to make up the difference but contribute to the same problem or worse and things like that. So even something like Japan, like they have resources, they haven't told, like, just because there's, yeah, you're going to have some old people who run out of socialized support and stuff like that. But like I said, if you can come up with a system where you don't have to deal with the consequences of these imbalances, I'll be all ears, but that's not possible. So then you just get to choose the form of your destructor, to quote Ghostbusters. And what they're choosing is the one that allows them to not have to deal with it quite just yet, but it's one that's going to be far, far worse when it happens. In Florida, I have apple, orange, avocado, starfruit, and mango. Yeah, I would look in, if you have the space, definitely get some kind of nut too, because something that you can get oil out of, that's a fantastic um, kind of resource to have. You have some kind of like walnut or something like that, or any nut that you could like make a crude press and just get even a little bit of oil out of. Avocados, you could probably, get oil out of them. If it's somewhere that I don't know about Florida, you probably can't grow olives there. That's more of like a drier climate thing. But yeah, nuts have a ton of good fats in them, which the fruits don't have, barring the avocado. Most fruits are just pure carbs. So if you can get one that has fats in it, so either the avocados, which are great, um, or the nuts too, which nuts store a lot better than avocados for sure. It's a benefit of nuts. My sister got her 6 code. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I certainly hope that she's in one of the batches that are not causing all these medical problems, because there does seem to be a huge variance in the batches. Um, yeah, you get them on the passion fruit SBQR. You're in the right part of Florida. That's a good one too. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of family members that took it too. So I hope the same thing, that they got one of those batches that is not causing problems. Nuts are crucial. Chinese chestnuts producing now, hazelnuts next month. Awesome, man. Sounds like you got a great setup. And have you rigged up, what do you do for picking the nuts? Have you rigged up a tree shaker, or do you just do it manually for the time being? Not for the time being, but what's your plan for in like a scenario where you don't have gas or stuff like that? Bad batch of stuff. Sorry to hear that. Like I said, I think we all have family members that took it. So all we can do is hope and pray that they are not going to suffer extreme consequences because of it. But from what I've seen, we're seeing a lot of medical institutions, word starting to come out about how many people that work there are succumbing to all these strokes and heart problems and turbo cancers and all sorts of crazy stuff to where they're having a mass shortage of medical personnel because they were all required to get it. Saw an interview or a video not too long ago from a woman who said she was one of only like 3 people in the entire hospital that didn't get the vaccine, and now everyone's having problems. Just collecting them as they fall out. Yeah, you could probably get some good tarp system, make like a hay mound at the bottom and kind of make a comb out of it, something like that. But yeah, you'll probably have plenty of time in the apocalypse to pick up your nuts. Peaches, apples, plant balls for great grandchildren often take a long time to get productive. Yeah, that's a problem with a lot of those Mediterranean type desert plants like olives and dates and stuff, is that you're not going to see, you can't just plant from the seed and get that stuff in your lifetime, really. So it's a shame. But that's why, again, the nuts are, I'm not sure what the actual process is for getting avocado oil, if how intensive it is. I know with nuts, you can literally make a manual press or use a hydraulic press with a jack and just crush the oil out of it to get some real oil. And then you could still eat the nuts or feed them to chickens or whatever. And if you're in Florida too, anywhere in the Southeast, if you guys have, and you can go pretty far north with this, but anyone who has like a homestead type setup, I really strongly suggest you guys look into a basic vermicomposting system with black soldier flies. You can set up some pretty rudimentary stuff, and it digests / composts any food waste and even manures, even human manure, if you set up a system properly to where you're not going to contaminate everything. And they process it extremely fast, and then they self migrate into like a collection bin, and you can use them to feed fish or birds. So you can turn almost any waste into, first of all, it gets rid of the waste very quickly. They eat like pounds and pounds of food each day if you have a colony that's active. And then the grubs will collect by themselves, and you can feed super highly nutritious proteins to your chickens. And then if you combine that with a redworm composting bin, because the only things that the soldier flies don't eat, and I have some cool old videos on this. If you guys are new to my channel, look up black soldier flies. When I was back in Florida, I had an aquaponics system going. I had chickens. I had the black soldier fly bin, and I would just throw an entire like rotisserie chicken carcass in there, like after you've eaten everything, and it's just the cartilage and gristle and everything. And the next day, nothing but bones. You throw a whole pizza, leftover, half a pizza from a party or something in there, gone in one day, and then feed the chickens your really nutritious food. Yeah, and you can sell. Google accounts have been toying with bug farming, got friends with lizards. They're great food for any reptiles, birds, fish, and all sorts of stuff. And you can eat them too. In an emergency, they have, not to go along with we will eat the bugs kind of thing, but in a legit survival situation, they have a pretty good fat and protein macro breakdown that you can turn actual garbage into something that you could at least eat. I prefer to feed it to chickens and then eat the eggs, or eat the chickens, or feed it to the tilapia and the fish and eat the fish. But you could eat the grubs directly if you want. And you can take a lot of just garbage and stuff that is rotten that you wouldn't even want to feed directly to the chickens, because most chickens can eat most human food scraps. Probably not quite as good for them, but not if it's rotten. There's lots of you don't want to feed them, and the bugs will just eat whatever, and then you give them the grubs, and it's nutritious. And you can actually freeze them or dry them out, and they store a lot better. So if you want to store chicken food, you have a bunch of like leftover trash and rotten pumpkin or whatever. You can't really store that, but you can put that in the vermicomposting bin and then collect the grubs and either dehydrate them, freeze them, or whatever. Locusts and mulberries, plant sweet potatoes too. Yeah, for non-tree and berry, for the ones that you have, for any crop that you have to do actual work like farming, the root crops, specifically potatoes, are by far my favorite in terms of the calories and yield per the amount of work that you have to put in. I mean, sweet potatoes, not the true yams, but like those are great too. They're a little harder to dig up, but if you have a good potato thing, like they're like a weed. You can just rip leaves off, stick them in water, it'll start a new plant, stick them in the ground. The biggest thing to keep in mind with those is you just want somewhere where there is loose soil so that they can grow freely and easy to harvest. But the sweet potatoes will grow like a weed with very little work. It's down in Florida and Southeast area. Yep, and wondering if aquaculture in an old hot tub is doable if fish eat soldier flies. For sure. There's calculation. They definitely will eat the soldier fly larva. Um, if they're big enough fish, obviously. And the aquaponics or aquaculture is doable at almost any scale. You just have to have the right ratio of grow beds to the amount of water slash fish that you have to be a effective um, filter because grow bed, the gravel grow bed, the bacterial cultures in there is what is actually cleaning the water for the fish. It's using the fish waste as food and thus cleaning the water. So if you don't have a big enough, you have too many fish for the size gravel bed, the fish will choke out. If you don't have enough fish for how many plants you're trying to grow, there won't be enough nutrients in the water and they'll be kind of feeble. So you can look it up. There's a program that Murray Hollam's Aquaponics like DVD, but a lot of that information is just all over YouTube if you're looking for it. Um, about how many cubic feet of gravel grow bed you need per gallon of water. I had, and most of the time the instinct is to go too big on the fish tank because you need a lot of grow bed if you're going to have a really densely populated fish tank. So finding the lack of bees, reducing the years for production here in Utah. Yeah, that's another thing I would absolutely do if slash when I get another homestead set up is an apiary. If it's able in your area, if you know you don't piss off your neighbors, I think that would be a fantastic thing to do. Not just for the honey, obviously, is a fantastic survival food to be able to produce, but for that reason alone, to help the success of all your other crops and everything, I think carp can do it, but only makes good gel-late fish balls. Yeah, a lot of those, I mean, you don't get a ton. The biggest advantage of the aquaponics system is the vegetable production without having to use any fertilizer or having good soil or anything like that. The fish production is more of a byproduct. You have to have a really, really big operation for it to produce an appreciable amount of like meat with the fish. Like, yeah, you'll be able to eat the fish, but it's better to for a normal household size um, setup, where you don't really have a big breeding system for a new round of it. Like I wouldn't count on producing fish as being the goal. The goal is I'm going to be able to make and grow these vegetables in an area or a place or in a format that I wouldn't necessarily be able to otherwise, using less water than I would otherwise, and that sort of thing. Not that I'm going to be producing a ton of fish because that has to be a really big operation, and with a ton of plants anyway to to grow a lot of fish. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do. What else we got on here? Let me see. I posted on. We don't have too many people on the Patreon just yet. Talked about how we're going to be giving away the Fox Edge knife, and then next month I got this cool little radio. So we got someone else now, but so there's only 8 paid people on there right now. So in the future, I'm going to every live stream, I will be soliciting your questions and topics to the Patreon people first. They will get priority. So as we get more and more people on there and more people in the chat, hopefully I won't be able to keep up with all the comments, which I can do for the most part now. So then priority will have to go to the Patreon people and then any super chats. But for the most part, it's not too bad right now. But this thing is really cool. And like I said, it's still going strong. I don't know if you guys caught the beginning of this, but I'm doing a test. I'm going to keep one and give away the other one. And this is the like Leehoos, I think it's called. I saw Morgan from Rogue Preparedness, and I'll put the link down there. Had this on her channel, and I was like, that thing is adorable. And I'm trying to run the battery down because you can see the light's still on. It's basically just like a night light level now, but and this has been on for. I left the light on for like it's over 72 hours because I'm trying to have it run out of power and then crank it for 10 minutes, the hand crank, and see how many minutes I can get of radio per minute of crank. But it has to run out first, and I didn't charge it when I got it, and it's still going. It has AM, FM, weather band, and a couple different options for lights like flashing red and stuff like that. Oh, it went up. There we go. I think it's doing like an SOS. So I'm still going to let it continue to run. And it has a 3,000 milliamp battery in there, which is pretty solid. I've told you before, these are terrible. It's a gimmick and they're stupid. They shouldn't even include it, but it doesn't really detract from it. It's just pointless. What's up, Betty? Got room, got way to haul them, got water. Currently hunting down free stock tanks or hot tub or something. Yeah, look for the IBC totes. That's what I use. Those are great. You could even use, you can make your own little like pond, and it depends on what type of setup you're going to use for a pump. You could use an old anything like fiberglass, bolt hole or whatever. Just with the IBC totes, just make sure they had something food grade in there. It's worth trying. They're so hard to clean out if they had anything weird in there that I really recommend even if you have to pay a little bit more to get a clean one. And you can use the 50-gallon drums and have a couple of them together linked up. You can check on looking back, search my videos. I have some that I've of my system with the aquaponics and the grub bins. Really cool stuff. I live in an apartment. Do you have advice on how to prepare? Yeah, I would focus on the space saving options. Obviously, figure out what your philosophy of preparedness is. If you're trying to be prepared for 30 days, if you're trying to eventually leave and go to a homestead, or that's not really a plan, you just want to be best prepared in there, best to figure out exactly what it is that you're doing and planning on like what level of preparedness you want, and then focus on the densest type of preparation. So water storage is going to be a big one because you can't really condense it. So you could look into things like the water bob for last minute stuff. Under bed is a big storage thing for apartments. If you can get 6 or 8 inch risers on your bed frame, that clears up a lot of space under there. And you could store at least 6 months worth of food under your bed if you get the right things. And under cabinets, and just you have to be creative with storage. But and one other thing I would focus on is like a fire prevention type stuff and bug out plan, because there's scenarios where you're going to have to leave apartments probably more often than houses. Now, the good thing, like I've talked about, is for certain types of like nuclear things, and being in a bigger building like an apartment gives you actually more protection than a house if you're not instantly blown away. So you can watch the recent video I did called The Poor Man's Nuclear War Preparedness. But I would just focus on fewer things in an apartment and probably stick to the higher quality stuff and be less worried about having so many backups, which is a big thing among preppers. Because obviously it's not ideal to not have backups, but space is the issue in apartments. Space is always going to be the issue in apartments, and houses too, but especially apartments. Most of the time, you just don't have the storage that you do, especially for stuff like water. So focus on maybe like water collection, water filtration, not storing quite as much, and just have fewer high quality items that are compact. But it's all the same stuff. Sterno doesn't freeze at normal temperatures. It's just alcohol based. But I mean, if you get to negative 150 or whatever, yeah, it'll freeze. Use ammo crates full of lead to block radiation. Yeah, if you can stack up enough ammo cans, an inch of lead or a quarter inch of steel or something is basically a halving effect. Or I mean, not an inch. Like, what's the list? I just saved a picture of this after my last video of the chart of the different types of halving distances for different materials. I don't know what I did. Little ADHD. Where did it go? Here we go. No, it doesn't show the details. Okay, here we go. So the halving distance, iron or steel is 3/4 of an inch. Doesn't have lead. I think lead is the best, obviously. But for metal, you just need 3/4 of an inch for the halving effect. Brick is 2 inches. So even one wall is great. That's why if you're in a building and the space has that effect too. I think it's 7 feet or something from the radiation source, or is a halving distance. It might be. Let me ask the Chat GPT. But for regardless, you can see that if you're 2 rooms in like an apartment building, like if you can go to the fitness center or something that's in the middle of the building, you are very, very well protected, because not only are you 150 to 100 feet from the outer walls and the roof where it'll be collected, but you have multiple actual walls of material in between them. So then you just got to worry about filtering your air. So let me ask the ChatGPT. Shrink pallet, stretch wrap plus trees equals instant net. Yeah, that's a good idea. Stretch wrap. It's under the trees. So what is the distance of open air that would have the ow, ow, have the exposure to fallout? Oh, open air is like 200 feet, 200 meters. So I'm crazy. But that's not what it said. Because if you are distance of open air that would have the exposure to radioactive fallout is approximately 650 feet. Um, that's with zero, literally open air. So, but with wood, it's like a couple, 16 inches. Metal is like not even an inch. That's C19 papers is still good for holding. Yeah. So this the suits and the Tyvek, they're not about, it's just for keeping it on your skin. So if you just left the suit on the entire time, it wouldn't do anything different than your skin. It's similar to like a latex glove, where if you put on a latex glove and you touch something dirty and then you touch your mouth, it has no purpose. You could do that with your hand, but it's just a reminder. And so easy way to strip off that. So you still have to limit your exposure. But yeah, if you are have any material in between you, and that's why just piling stuff up can make quite a bit of difference. But just open air, you need a lot of distance. Pallet wrap trick has been used in many stoves. Yep, yep, yep. But yeah, you could do weights. I need like a steel target and just pile stuff up. Excuse me. ChatGPT is giving me a different answer than what it says in the nuclear war preparedness manual, because I don't think that is. I think it's less distance than that. But you can read that book online, the Nuclear War Survival Manual online. Somewhere online. If I find it, I'll put it in the survival skills. Let's call it online. A key point is keeping your building sealed while radioactive air particles are falling out. Yeah, exactly. And since that's so difficult, that's why I recommended, especially if you're going to a makeshift shelter, like you haven't had time to prep this, is for at least the first couple days is to keep on your air filter as much as possible. So unless you're actively eating or drinking, and I wouldn't even do that for the first 24 hours. I mean, obviously you got to take a sip of water or something, but I wouldn't bother eating or anything for the first 24 to 48 hours and make sure I was breathing through that filter, changing it a couple times if I had the extras, because you're not going to be able to actively, effectively seal and if you seal it too well, then you could die of oxygen deprivation too if you don't have an actual air filtration system. So it's probably not smart. Just totally seal up a room that you're in. Yeah, anything asbestos removal rated. Yeah, so most of those P100 level masks are fine for radiated particles. You just don't want to go with a cheapo like COVID mask. Mostly because it's just not sealed properly. I mean, like even a few strips of material would be better than nothing if the air was actually going through it. But those have so many leaks, especially when they get moist from your breath and things like that. But yeah. So the nuclear war survival skills is online. Yeah, here we go. This is the 87 version. The only new one is updated with some talk about Russia and how things have been known to um, change since then. So, That's I just posted that in the description. Evacuation. We got all sorts of stuff. But yeah, thickness of material. It doesn't even matter what the material is if you can get a lot of it in between you and the potential radiation source. Yeah, I've got the Mira too, and they seem super legit. But they are expensive. They're definitely better because they are multi-threat. They can face nerve agents and all sorts of other stuff. If you're worried just about nuclear fallout, then a P100 respirator will work for that. But if you want to be able to deal with all sorts of other stuff, like smoke and gases and chemical agents and biological agents and viruses and things like that, and not just nuclear fallout, then you want a real gas mask. And not just a dust mask. But Mira is fantastic. I have those and I've been promoting them as well. So they're fantastic. And not the only one. But at the very least, I would make sure you get new filters. I recommend getting a new mask and filter, not relying on the old mills, surplus ones, just because the rubber can be old and rotted and things like that. But if you have to go that route, at least get a new filter. That has to be the part that works. Just a 40 mm filter. And I believe someone was saying you can go on Amazon and get just 40 mm dust filters that are cheaper. If it does get to something like, say there's a 9/11 event and it's just dust and debris everywhere, or even a nuclear event, you can get away with the type of respirator type filter, particulate filter that will still work with a Mira or other gas mask, but be quite a bit cheaper. So you can change them out more often, especially for later. And I use your real ones for the first few days of or few hours of the event, and then after that, just swap them out, because a gas mask filters are only rated to work and provide the stated level of protection for 4 to 8 hours for most, sometimes even less, depending on the agent. The more intense the agent is or small the particles are, the less time that they're typically rated to last. So I would assume that if you're just worried about dust level particles, you could push those hours out to the past what they say, but I wouldn't want to risk it unless I had to. And if you can get these cheapo dust ones for $15 or something, then and just stock up a few of those so you can really just stay in it a longer. Yeah, California fires are rough. But let me know your last one. I have to sell some stuff on Facebook Marketplace. I got someone coming over. Got my storage unit adventures running full swing as always. So I will have to jump off here right at 7. So we got about 5 minutes for you guys' questions. Let's see. I don't think we had any show up in the Patreon, but jump on there and become a member anyway if you want to win this October 1st or so. I should do that drawing. What's the closest? Yeah, somewhere around there. Maybe I'll do it on the next live stream, but right at the end of the month either way. And then after that, next month we'll have tested and done the review video of this Leahy's emergency radio and power bank. It's fun. What else we got? You guys got 3 minutes, but I appreciate you coming by. And hopefully next time I will have my cactus back up and running, not just my nuclear. I can say nuclear properly now. I don't say nuclear anymore. I still have to think about it. Nuclear just rolls off the tongue so easily. I have a real MSA Black and see you. Is that a gas mask? Thank you, Vince. I appreciate the kind words. I will try to endeavor to make more content for you guys. I got a couple cool videos coming up, and as the weather has been going down, I should be able to do more outdoor videos as well. But I appreciate you guys watching. I will go ahead and jump off. Yep, healthy and physical fitness is #1 prep, and I have a couple challenges that I'm gonna be doing to see if to make sure I whip myself back into shape and see if you guys can follow along. Some real world, like practical preparedness type fitness challenges. So appreciate you guys watching, and I should be back on here next.